We did shoot in an S&M store.
I remember that one. That's a famous one.
So do I. Yeah.
Do you know that when you go on Peacock or NBC to see past seasons, I think that episode is no longer available.
That's the censorship industrial complex at work.
It should never have happened. We've also come a long way there.
Welcome to Mixed Signals from Semaphore Media, where we are tracking the wild changes in this media age. I'm Max Tawney, media editor here at Semaphore, and with me, as always, is our editor-in-chief, Ben Smith.
Excited to be here this week, Max.
Yeah, this is a pretty exciting one. I am a big fan and an admirer of these two guests. I can't even hide my excitement and adoration. This week on the show, we are talking to Tom Colicchio and Gail Simmons. They are the longtime judges of the show Top Chef on Bravo, which is just now wrapping up its 22nd season. We'll ask both of them about the evolution of food media, how the show has changed over the course of 22 seasons, and the food and restaurant trends that they hate the most.
Max, I love that you're such an enthusiast, and I think it's one of the things that makes it fun to talk with you about media. And this may be the thing you love most.
This episode, I've been excited for a lot of episodes, and this one might be pretty close to the top of the list. We're excited to sit down with Tom and Gail and let them share in my enthusiasm right after the break.
So Max, give us a sense of like who Tom and Gail are and what the kind of, I don't know, what that show's place is in this giant piece of the media business.
Well, to me, I see Top Chef as being at the top of the hierarchy of all food media that kind of came afterwards. A lot of the things that they came up with were kind of later ripped off by the Food Network. And, Top Chef, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a competition cooking show, starts with, I believe, 15 contestants each season. Every episode, it's whittled down by one or two chefs. And it's been going for 22 years. It's given the world a lot of really, really famous chefs that were kind of discovered there. And, the reason why I was so excited about talking to Tom and Gail today is they've really been there literally since the beginning, and they're still doing it. And I think that what's really interesting to me is that they've seen this arc of food media and of food in America. They've seen how diets and preferences have changed. And I think their show has actually probably played a role in helping shape some of that, both in terms of people's understanding of what good food is supposed to kind of look and feel like and what good service is supposed to look and feel like, but also by, giving the world these amazing chefs who've gone on to, become stars in their own right.
Yeah, and Gail was a journalist at Food and Wine. Tom, I think, founded Kraft in New York back in the day. And, but I think they've both also embodied the way in which, like, food has become media. I think that if you'd asked 20 years ago, like, what's going to take over American media? Like, I'm not sure food would have been the obvious prediction, but it
food
really
and
is
sports.
Yeah, that's pretty much all that's left at this point.
Yeah. Have you been to Kraft?
I used to go, like, when I was a young reporter back in the day, I would take sources there, but it's been a long time.
I went about a year ago. Still great. Still fantastic.
I'm concerned that you're more interested in food than in media here, but this is a media show. Just a reminder.
I'll try my best to keep it on the subject of media.
All right, let's bring Tom and Gail on. Thank you guys for joining us, Gail and Tom. And I guess to begin, we're talking about the 22nd season of Top Chef, which is pretty unbelievable for any TV show. And I'm just curious to go back to that first season. Maybe, Gail, if you want to go first. Like, you were a food writer, moonlighting on TV. Did you have was there a moment when you're like, wow, we really have something, this is going to run forever? Or did this just feel like a total lark?
First of all, your choice of words as moonlighting on television is like a gross overstatement. Top Chef season 1 was the first television show I ever did. Before that, I had probably done 5 live to tape news, food, cooking segments on television, full stop. So this was a real stretch when Food Wine Magazine sort of sent me off into the wilderness to shoot this show really on a lark. I mean, we believed in the show and we believed in the idea and we knew Tom was part of it, which gave us a little peace of mind, but it was a real leap of faith for a magazine to partner with a television show on a reality competition back when reality shows were in their sort of nascent stage, to say the least. And to say that was the question of was there a moment during that season when we all were like, yeah, this is incredible. We're really creating something new. Yeah, Tom knows. No, there was
Not
never
that
that
season.
moment. Not at all. I know when the moment was, for me anyway,
Yeah.
but it was not during the shooting of season 1.
When was it?
For me, season 2, at the time, my real job at Food and Wine magazine was running the Food and Wine Classic in Aspen. And I would go to Aspen several times a year for site meetings before the actual event. And we were at a site meeting that happened to be the week that the finale of season 2 was airing. And as you may recall, season 2 had a lot of drama, a lot of scandal, a lot
Yes.
of issues around it.
It's the head
And
shaving incident.
there was the head shaving
famously
incident. There was
attempted.
Marcel's, there was a lot of like villain and good guy, bad guy stuff happening.
Yeah.
There was a lot of drama in general. And then there was actually a quick leak of the winner hours before the actual show aired. And I thought I was going to be fired. I thought my career was over. I thought Food and Wine was going to be sued. Like, I really thought this was the demise of not only the show, but of my life and job. And I went to bed that night and could barely sleep. I was so anxious the day before the finale was airing. And the next morning, I woke up in Aspen and I had asked for a copy of the New York Times. I woke up on a Wednesday morning. Wednesday's the dining section of the New York Times. And I knew that Frank Bruni, who was the restaurant editor at the time, was going to be writing about the show. But we had no idea what he was going to say. If he liked the show, he was feared and revered. And I woke up at like 6 a.m. I couldn't sleep that night. And I opened the door to my hotel room and the New York Times was sitting, they had delivered it to my room. And the cover story of the dining section was about our show, was the story.
Wow.
And I was like, this is it. This is the end. And the article, on the contrary, was incredible. And Frank really
Wow.
wrote, like, he got it. I mean, I loved him already for a lot of reasons, but he really got the show, what we were trying to do, our intention, and he saw the possibility in it, and he praised it. And it was like above the fold, full page cover dining of the dining section. And that was when I said, okay, I think we might be onto something.
Do you feel like there were people, and maybe this is a question for you, Tom, because, Gail was saying, Frank Bruni really got the show. Do you think that there were people who kind of didn't get it? Because season 1, it's early. You've got a mix of serious chefs and then also some people who were like literally home cooks, like had
Yep.
never done this professionally. It was on Bravo, which I think at the time had just had Project Runway as well, but it was kind of a different, it was obviously a very different thing. Were there a lot of people who didn't quite get it at first, or did you feel like, other people understood?
I think people got it right away. And I think there was a good combination of people who cared about food and then the reality junkies who got their dose of reality TV. So I think that always worked. But, for me, my goal was that this was going to be a show that was taken seriously by my industry, right? That other chefs would look at this and go, okay, this is worthwhile. And I think the first season, it was good that I think the finale was really at least 2 serious restaurant professionals, right? That made it
Yeah.
to the finale. So, and we knew right away that if you were a home cook, you couldn't hang. There was no way you can do this. You couldn't think fast enough. You couldn't move fast enough, prep fast enough. And we had to talk Bravo out of that because they kept insisting on, well, what if they win? And it's like, they will never win. And then I remember it was like, well, we got a student from CIA, and they said he's the best student they've ever had. He lasted 1 episode. and so then I think when they finally realized by like season 4 that they can only cast chefs. And I think by season 6, it got really serious. But I think from the very beginning, people were into it. Just based on the reaction of people who I, would meet on the street. So, there was always something there. Whether or not it had the staying power, that was still to be seen.
So, Gail, I want to ask you this question. I went back, both for fun and for research for this episode. I went back and have been watching some of the older seasons of Top Chef, it's really fun. There's some really, really amazing episodes.
Hairstyles?
Different hair, slightly different hairstyles. Not for Tom though. Tom
Tom stayed
remarkably
true to
consistent.
himself.
I had the soul
He
patch.
had a little hair. Yeah,
Yeah, the
had
soul
soul
patch.
patch then, yeah.
That's season 1, right? The soul patch is cool.
Bring it back, Tom.
But I was watching, in watching those seasons, the show has really changed a lot in a lot of ways. And I feel like you guys have talked about this a little bit. It's gotten a lot nicer. there's a little bit less emphasis on the kind of personal drama between the chefs. You're not getting incidents like the one that we talked about, which is the most famous one, which is obviously the an attempt to shave one of the contestants' heads without his consent. But I want to play devil's advocate here, and I am curious if you guys, Gail, if you think that anything is lost when, by de-emphasizing some of the personal drama and, only, really, really emphasizing the food. Like, are some of the stakes lost, do you think?
Absolutely not. I don't think anything's been lost. I think a lot's been gained, actually. What's interesting and what's hard to know exactly is that what happens with our show, and remember this is over the course of 20 years in our life. Think about where you were 20 years ago.
In elementary school, I think.
Max.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I was also in elementary school for the record.
Same,
But
exactly.
Tom was a middle schooler already.
Yeah.
But think about the course of 20 years in the restaurant industry, in the world, in our universe. So much has happened and changed and evolved in television and in the restaurant industry. And it's hard sometimes to know, did we make these changes actively? Or often it's more of a symbiotic relationship with the restaurant industry itself. And I think a lot of the things that happen on our show are reflections of the industry in real time and vice versa. I think we also set precedents on the show that have become standards in the industry. And I think that the idea that we're all nicer, people sort of act as if we did this conscious thing to make everyone nicer. No, I think our industry has risen, sometimes from the ashes over the last several years. And I think in general, there's more transparency, there's more conscious, conversations, communication, advocacy for what you need, who you are, for the diversity of the industry. And I think that has just made it a better place to work because there's real conversations happening. And I think that's really shown on the show. And I actually think that our audience, that's what they've always wanted. They've realized that that's what separates our show from every other food competition on the air, that it's not about like the sort of outside drama or the connivingness. Like there's plenty of other reality franchises that do that really well, and that's fantastic, and many of them are on Bravo. But our show is always about the food, and it's about the professionals, and we have created hundreds of chef leaders and stars because of it, like in the best sense. I don't know. I think it's only made our industry stronger, and I think it's only made the show a better reflection to the rest of the world who aren't part of our industry. It's made our industry more understood and more appreciated.
That's so interesting because I think if you said like what's the general direction of travel of television, I think it was there was like a show called Fuckboy Island on Max last year. Like
Nikki Glaser, of course.
Like I think that like mostly Dumber and Crueler would be the answer to that. And it's interesting that you maybe not entirely, but you're certainly going the other direction.
Well, the reason I am is because I think about Tom and I and our co-judges and hosts. And when we started, there was this really like hyper editing that we all had to sort of play these characters of what a competition judge is supposed to be, the Paula and the Simmons of it all. And our audience really hadn't reacted to that. We didn't react positively. Like we realized very early on that we are the taste buds for the audience. And if they don't trust us, if they don't like us, because they're on the side of the chefs, they're rooting for the chefs. And that's where the tension lies, right? And if they don't believe us and trust our opinions, and if we aren't sort of constructive and thoughtful in the way we do things, there's lots of other shows on other networks too, food shows that are about like yelling at the contestants and making it about us as personalities. But like that hasn't worked on Top Chef because we are about professional kitchens in the best sense of the word.
Yeah.
And I think it's allowed us to be ourselves a lot more and to be a lot more thoughtful. And I think that has lent itself to better conversations and better story, really, because it allows us to really focus on, it's not like there isn't great story and drama happening. It's just not at the expense of people. You know what I mean?
That's so nice. That's what I aspire to at Semaphore, to be the
Right.
top chef of the news media.
I think what happens is a lot of the chefs who are on now, they grew up watching the show.
Yeah.
And so they saw the bad behavior, and they look at that and say, I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
I think it's becoming less attractive to be that person.
Yeah.
They're much more media savvy.
Yeah, I was going to say you guys have sort of lived through and shaped to some degree this almost merger of the restaurant business, the food business, and the media. And I'm curious, in the broadest sense, Tom, like how has that kind of shaped the landscape for professional chefs? Is part of being a chef being a content creator, as they say?
No, well, I mean, part of living these days, I think, is becoming a content creator. No, I think the big change. If you're on the show and you get pretty far along, you have a much better shot at raising money to open a restaurant. Mm-hmm. And that's the barrier. And I mean, listen, anyone can open a restaurant. The real barrier to entry is raising money. And typically, minorities, women, people of color always struggled to raise money in open restaurants. And that's why they were underrepresented. And I think being on the show, being showcased on the show, it's much easier to raise money to open a restaurant. So I think, we've done a great job with, by providing those type of opportunities.
I mean, has it flowed back into like, if you're a young chef or a kid who dreams of being a chef, are you also thinking about how you shoot your food and how you manage your Instagram account? Are they teaching that at the Culinary Institute now?
Yeah, I think so. But I don't think that, I gave a commencement speech years ago to a graduating class at CIA. And I said, if you're here because you want to be the next Emerald and your parents sitting next to you apologize for wasting their money, because you're not going to be. I mean, it doesn't happen.
Singular.
And so if you're here because you love cooking, and at some point, if someone thinks that you should be on TV or in media, all well and good, but that shouldn't be the reason you're doing this.
Yeah.
There's a lot easier things to do to get on TV than to work in kitchens.
Yeah. Now, Gail, you were a food journalist. We talked about this. You were working at Food and Wine when you got cast on Top Chef. Can you talk a little bit about that merger of kind of food and media and how you have seen the food media industry change, both from the inside and obviously as somebody who is a prominent talker on television?
I do talk. I would say it's been an enormous evolution. I have so many memories of those early years when Food and Wine first agreed to be part of the show and then sort of put me up as their representative and sent me to do the show. And the real fears we had, because it was so unknown and it was almost looked down upon. It was lowbrow, right? Television was still lowbrow. Publishing was when I moved to New York, went to culinary school because I wanted to be in media, but what that meant is I wanted to be a writer.
Yeah.
I wanted to work in print publishing. Granted, that sounds like I'm 100 years old, but that was the dreamiest, most aspirational thing I could imagine that I loved. And when I remember when our publisher and editor-in-chief came to me about the Top Chef opportunity and partnering on the show, our editor was actually at the time very apprehensive because she understood that there was a mass audience that Food and Wine wasn't reaching, but Food and Wine could pride itself on this sort of niche demographic of affluent food lovers that traveled the world and home cooked dinner parties for 25 on the weekends. But now we see this very clear path, partially through Top Chef and through food media explosion into social media content, etc., where print publishing, is no longer necessarily the king, right? And even if it exists, Food and Wine very much still exists. Their digital content, their social, their creation is the biggest growing piece of what their business is about, right? Food and Wine was just bought by Dotdash, which was originally a content digital company. And so here we are at this crossroads where you have to focus on the content itself, not the medium.
Yeah.
And I think that 20 years ago, that was unheard of. That was unfathomable. And we have seen now the struggle of how to adapt. So much so that I'm actually working on a sitcom with NBC about this exact problem.
Oh, really?
So, yes.
Can you give us a little more on that?
Well, it's called Taste. It's in development, and it is really about a legacy food magazine in this moment in media history and how it is struggling and needs to pivot very quickly. So brings in some young digital savvy TikTokers to run the show, and
Oh, this is
chaos
micro-targeted.
ensues.
This is micro-targeted for us. I love it.
Yeah, yes.
But it really is, because this is like a moment in popular culture, I think, not just in food, but in media, where if you're not able to pivot and evolve, then you're left in the dust because it's happening so quickly.
Tom, what's this been like? What's this transition been like for you? Because, you were a subject of food media coverage, the old style, before you were a judge on Top Chef. What's this been like as somebody who was written about and who people created kind of content about, and also as somebody who's been a restaurateur and has been on the other side of this kind of explosion of essentially social media, food content creation?
I still consider myself a chef and restaurateur first.
Yeah.
And I am moonlighting on this other job. I didn't look at it that way. I looked at what I was doing on TV was an extension of what I was doing in the restaurant. I look at the chefs as chefs that are working in my restaurant. I'm mentoring them. My judging, to me, isn't about necessarily judging, but more about mentoring, more about giving feedback. And in the course of that feedback, clearly you are criticizing, but it's more, in terms of the way I look at it, it's more constructive criticism, with the hopes that when they leave, and we hear this all the time, when they leave, that they are better cooks, they're better chefs. It's almost like going through boot camp. And it's a lot of soul searching, it's a lot of digging down deep and trying to figure out what you have to say. And it's something that we encourage them to do, and especially in the last 10 seasons, it's more about that, about encouraging them not just to replicate, a type of food because you saw it, but what's important to you. And so that's the way I look at it. And I don't, in a way, I still keep myself apart from the media. I still think, what we're doing is that media is covering what we're doing. It just happens to be on a set. That's the only way I can make sense of this. The transition was interesting. From being recognized in your restaurant because people were coming to your restaurant to going through an airport and having people want to take photos. I mean, I can't get used to that. It's just, it blows me away.
It's interesting. I feel like we talk to, like, a lot of the most successful media people in this moment are people, I think, like you, who are like, I'm just doing the thing and I'm not obsessing about the feedback loop and optimizing it.
I used to. I mean, I used to watch the show and then go on social media and fight with people. And I stopped that. I absolutely not doing it.
Not good for your mental health.
No,
Yes.
Well, it wasn't a way. It wasn't that bad for mental health. In a way, it was good because I would figure out who I can actually turn, and if I did that, it was good for my mental health. I just couldn't take time anymore.
Well, and social media has in some sense changed from fighting with people on Twitter to like trying to hang on to the twists and turns of TikTok and Instagram in particular. And I mean, Gail, I'm curious how that has changed. How has that changed food? That sort of shift to these, like, to essentially influencer world?
I struggle with it personally because some of it's not really cooking, and you can't help feeling like there's so much out there that is like hacks,
Like, what's an example of something that's like not really
like
cooking?
just all the quick Instagram food that I'm like, did anyone eat this? Is this really for eating? It's just all hacks and quick, like under 30 seconds, and to beat the algorithm and to go viral, and some of it's enthralling and fun to watch, but it sort of has forgotten that it's about food. You know what I mean? Like,
When someone opens up a can of Vienna sausages, we're in trouble. I mean,
right? Yeah, there's just a lot of like hacking food for the point of it.
Well, we've got so much more that we want to ask Gail and Tom, but we'll be right back with you guys right after the break.
This week on our branded segment from Think with Google, I spoke with Google's VP of Marketing, Josh Spanier, about how marketers win in what is apparently called the attention recession. One of your colleagues, Vidya Srinivasan, who's the VP of Ads and Commerce over at Google, recently coined the term attention recession. What does that mean?
I'm sorry, Ben, were you talking to me? I was distracted by the 17 other devices I'm using all day, every day.
Yes, I know the feeling.
The attention recession, indeed, one of my colleagues at Google spoke about this recently, is a very real thing. And one of the challenges we face in marketing is we can all lament the way the world is going, but we have to market within the way the world is. And people are spending more time scrolling, streaming, shopping, and searching on multiple devices concurrently. One of the things I've seen and assume is that if someone's using just one device, they actually might be mindful to my marketing message. Otherwise, they're really distracted. And it's rare that they are just using that one device.
So how do you actually think about strategy in the attention recession?
Well, this is a genuinely longer conversation, but 3 quick things. First of all, you have to be relevant. That really means tapping what people are watching on YouTube, what people are searching for using Google Trends to identify and actually make sure that you're being relevant to your audiences. Second, you got to be fresh and you've got to be kind of fast. That means being able to make creative, make assets, and move kind of at the speed of culture to keep up with where people are at. And third, luckily, Google builds a lot of technologies into our ad stack, which actually allows you to take advantage of the speed and scale that Google can deliver to do all sorts of things that makes it easier as a marketer so you can actually overcome this. That includes building affinity segments in audiences, turning on things like demand gen, which allows you to serve multi-format ads across everything that Google sells, and really leveraging your first-party data to do audience expansion tools across YouTube and beyond. There are tools that will help you overcome the fact that we're all higgledy-piggledy.
Higgledy-piggledy, and that's the most British thing you've said yet. And where can our audience find out more about this?
Head on over to thinkwithgoogle.com for insights from Vidya, the Google VP of Ads and Commerce on thinkwithgoogle.com.
All the new technology of production has basically instead of making our lives simpler, has allowed us to do more complicated and ambitious stuff. I'm curious if there's anything that you're doing now that feels like kind of pushing the edges of what you can do technically.
Drone shots and things like that, where 10 years ago we didn't use that, and now it's pretty much every episode there's a drone shot. There's a lot of little things with cameras and stuff that provide some pretty cool perspective.
The steady cams that we use.
Yeah, that and certain lenses and stuff that you capture, different. Capture images is different, but yeah, there's some cool stuff happening on the production side. But our production has also grown. I mean, I think our first season, we had about 40 people on the crew. Now we're about 150.
Wow. That's crazy.
We have a full carpentry shop.
Wow.
Amazing.
The hard part about our show, we're not a studio show. We're not sitting in a studio for 13 episodes, and that's easy. We're out on location.
Right.
So we go on location. They need to build kitchens. If there's a walk-around event, someone's building those stands that the chefs are standing behind, right?
Wow.
To dish out the food. Someone's got to build all that.
These are jobs that AI is not going to eliminate.
Correct.
That's correct.
No, that job AI is not going to eliminate.
I am really curious if you see anywhere specifically where the show has shaped the things that people are actually eating.
I don't know if the show has changed food. What I think it's done is given the audience vocabulary by which to talk about food and discuss food. I mean, I'm sitting in a restaurant. I can hear my voice. 3 tables over. Not my voice, but my things that we talk about on the show coming out of people's mouths. Even like something like the amuse-bouche is become so like in the vernacular of talking about restaurants, talking about food. You'll watch the show that's nothing about food, but you have to stirring an amuse-bouche. It wasn't even mentioned until like Top Chef. Maybe in a restaurant, someone came by and said, in a French restaurant, you got an amuse-bouche, but so I think it gave the audience and gave the actual the casual diner insight into what it takes to make a plate of food. And I think they become more appreciative of the work that goes into it. But I don't think it actually changed food.
I think it's made some of the trends and chef techniques more widely understood, maybe.
Yes.
Again, it's given insight and vocabulary to civilians, so to speak, about, things that otherwise would have been a small percentage of people in the industry. I also do think that on a very macro level, the economy of restaurants in America has changed because of Top Chef, simply because of the hundreds of contestants who've come through our show, gotten visibility, funding, as Tom explained, and gone on to open hundreds of incredibly successful award-winning restaurants. And now there is an actual travel economy where people travel the country and specifically when they land in a different city, seek out a Top Chef restaurant.
Wow.
And that has, I definitely believe, bolstered the restaurant economy in America.
Yeah. Okay. Lightning, last questions for you. What's a restaurant or food trend that you're a little sick of?
Small plates to share.
Yeah.
The dumbest thing I ever heard in my
Sure.
life. Why are you sharing small plates? I would drive me crazy where I order a dish on the menu. I want this. And by the time I get it, by the time it gets passed around,
Yeah.
it's a smudge on the plate. And I have to enjoy it somehow. Hate that concept.
I will say, I ate at Kraft maybe a year ago. That was not my experience.
Large plates.
Plenty of stuff for everybody.
Large plates to share. Absolutely
Correct.
makes sense.
Correct.
Not small plates to share.
Yeah.
No.
I don't know. I think the over excessiveness bugs me a little. The idea of the sort of like the cotton candy boba mashup with the like that stuff that just feels excessive, and I don't know. It's just like a popularity contest.
Bouncing salt off your forearm. Like, that went away, thank God.
The throwing around of meat on the internet, I also find really disturbing. Though, like, you know what I mean? Where they're like, they throw it down and then they chop it up and then I don't know, it feels aggressive. Let's be kind to our animals who died for this purpose.
Well, that might be something that came from you guys' show, though, because it is so fun to watch. When you guys do with the challenge where people have to do things really quickly, I forget what it is, but doing the prep, when people are doing the prep amazingly quickly and they're kind of throwing things places.
Like a mise en place race.
Yes.
Prep and efficiency and being quick is important. I'm talking more about like the aggression.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
I do want to know what you think about Resi. There's a lot of grumbling, I guess, among foodies about how it's changed the experience.
Yeah, I don't know coming from that side of it. It's hard to say. You know what does drive me crazy, and I try to train my staff on this, and it happened again, when I walked in the restaurant today. You're looking at a reservation sheet. I know it's not a computer screen, but if you can't memorize the next 5 names coming in, right? Know that Mr. Smith is one of the next 5 people. Within the next 15 minutes, there's a reservation for Smith or Green coming in. And when you come in and go, reservation for Green, they look down as if this is a mystery that this happened. And then they got to do this and do this and do this before they want. How about they know that Mr. Green's coming in? Mr. Green says, party of 2, Mr. Green. And they say, oh, come right in. And they seat you. And then they go back to the podium and do all the stuff they have to do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to sit there waiting. It's
Hospitality.
like, this thing. I came really close to saying, print out the sheet and get rid of the computer screen at my front desk because it drives me crazy. Like, what is all this typing in that you're doing? You should know ahead of time what table I'm being sat at. Just come on in and sit down. This is insane.
So you guys have been doing the show for over 20 years. It's your 22nd season. That's about to wrap. I mean, how maybe I'll direct this first to you, Tom, but for both of you guys, I mean, any signs of slowing down on you guys' end? I mean, how long do you want to be doing it for? And I ask that from I hope, I have an answer that I want from this question, but I'm curious, how long do you guys want to keep doing the show?
I love doing it. I actually enjoy doing the show. I always say it's like going to summer camp. And I didn't go to summer camp as a kid, how I imagined summer camp was. You go and you hang out with this group of friends for the 6 or 7 weeks that you're away at camp, and then you go back home to your life. And at some point, you look forward to going and hanging out with these people again. And I love it. I think we're making great TV. The amount of young chefs that we get to meet that probably we never meet is something I'm always excited about. But no, I'll continue doing it. I enjoy doing the show. As long as they keep producing this thing, I'm good for another, 8-10 years.
All right.
What he said.
Yeah.
Whenever Tom's there, I'm there. I mean, it's been a privilege. It's been the great privilege of my life. I mean, this is not a direction I ever planned on taking, and I wish it was up to Tom and I. It's not. It's above our pay grade. But I will say that I have this distinct memory of in season 4, we were in Chicago, and Andy Cohen, who was our executive producer, who really created Top Chef, came to visit the set, and he took us out for dinner, and we're sitting at dinner, and I said to him, this was season 4, Andy, how much longer? Because I couldn't believe we were making season 4. How much longer could we possibly be making this show? I can't believe that we're still able to do this in 4 seasons. And he said, I don't know, season 11? And I laughed at him because that was incomprehensible to me. And here we are heading into season 23. And it isn't, I hope it doesn't slow down because I think there's just so much more to tell. There's so many more places to go, ingredients, and young people to discover in the industry.
Well, Tom, Gail, thank you guys so much for doing this. This was
Thank you,
a
guys.
lot of fun. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, Ben. So I had to geek out a little bit there. I had to be a true fanboy, and so that was a blast for me. I couldn't see it in a non-biased way. But what did you think as more of a removed observer? What did you think about what Gail and Tom had to say about how food media has changed?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was sort of struck and kind of heartened by the notion that like media has really been this force for good and basically this totally depraved industry where everybody was awful to each other for a long time, and that honestly, it just seems like people are nicer to each other in restaurant kitchens. That's great. But actually, the thing that struck me most, because actually, and I mentioned this when we were talking to them, but just I think it's become kind of a running theme in a lot of the people we talk to now, is that often I think you talk to people in the heart of these media things, and you expect them to be kind of like ruthlessly cynical optimizers who are figured out some hack to get audience and sell advertising. And actually, the people succeeding right now, I think, and this isn't always exactly true, the pendulum swings, but I think the people succeeding right now tend to be people who are obsessed with the thing they're making and who are a little detached from the audience. This was the sort of Chris Black observation that he doesn't want to know the traffic. I think these aren't people who, I think the pure social media age, like the 2015 to 2020 world of just being in this tight embrace with social media and this intense feedback loop. And what you get from that actually is Twitter right now.
Yeah.
Just like people incentivized to make things up or be insane for engagement, but it's this sort of, it's like collapsing into itself. And I think most of the more successful media products, or a lot of them right now, are made by people who aren't obsessing about the audience, who are obsessing about the product.
Yeah, or obsessing about their specific audience. I think that there is something that's specific for Gail and Tom in the sense that they paid a lot of attention clearly very early on. And so by putting the reps in years ago, they've been able to kind of tune out of some of that stuff.
Right, and they've dropped the more cynical classic reality TV stuff, it sounds like.
Well, the thing is that's really interesting that they kind of alluded to in this, and I think that they haven't really been shy about talking about, is that they fought with Bravo over the format, and eventually the show was so popular with its fans, me among them, that they basically won. And so now they do the show that they want to do. I was surprised by the fact that the scale is that much bigger, which is crazy. It is more of a polished show, but I didn't realize it had like tripled in size. It's interesting.
Yeah, and it is when people sort of assume that technology will eliminate jobs, in a way, in a little microcosm, what you see in the production of these high-end TV shows is actually that there's much more technology. You can shoot boiling water from many different more angles, but also somehow they manage to have even more people running around doing things.
And it's different. It feels different, though, than the narrative maybe in our side of media on the news side, which is all really about, how people like me need to be able to do 5 different things. And so we're going to be smaller and leaner and kind of run and gun. It's surprising to me to hear that they went from smaller and leaner, even at the peak of reality television, then to being this behemoth. 150
When do we get
people.
our own carpentry shop, Max?
That is true. I think we actually could use some carpentry to build some more sets for us around here, I think.
You listening to us, Josh Billinson?
Yeah.
But thanks for bringing them on, Max. It's like, this is like a bit of a new world to me. And it's interesting to see the ways in which it sort of crosses the rest of media.
Totally. Yeah, they were so fun. Well, that is it for us this week. Thanks, as always, for listening to Mixed Signals from Semaphore Media. Our show is produced by Sheena Ozaki, with special thanks to Britta Galanis, Chad Lewis, Rachel Oppenheim, Anna Pizzino, Garrett Wiley, Jules Zern, and Tori Kaur. Our engineer is Rick Kwan, and our theme music is by Billy Libby. Our public editor is Andy Cohen.
And now that we have our own carpentry team, I hope that you will check us out on YouTube, where you can watch and subscribe.
And if you want even more, you can always sign up to 7-4's media newsletter, which is out every Sunday night.